In this year's edition, we reveal that the beauty industry's era of effortless growth is cooling to a new reality, causing all businesses to rethink and to recalibrate. So let's start by the numbers. The global beauty industry by 2030 is supposed to be $590 billion, an incredible feat. But growth is slowing. The compound annual growth rate from 2024 to 2030 was 5%, down from 7% just a few years before. There are spots of growth, fragrance being one of them, as we see that they are seeing a wide range of new customers as well as a wave of premiumization. E-commerce also continues to grow, being a lever that customers can use to find their favorite products and also their favorite brands. They're discovering things in marketplaces, TikTok Shop, all sorts of news places besides just the physical store. These are the 5 themes that we hotly debated between the BOF team and as well as the McKinsey team. The fragmenting customer, true value, beyond the founder, marketing New Balance Act, and channels at a crossroad. Looking deeper at the numbers, we need to think about what's driving change in the industry. These are the themes that will kind of define what we're expecting in the next few years. I'd love to turn it over to Kristi.
Great. Thanks so much, Priya. Thank you all for listening today. I'm going to start with the first theme, which is the fragmenting consumer. To capture growth, brands are going to need to think about a different way to work across the world. Let me give you a few examples of the differences that we're seeing across countries in the new report. For instance, in the US, we are seeing a continued blurring of beauty and wellness. In fact, 44% of consumers now define beauty as both mind and body, which is higher than ever before. Compare and contrast that to China, where despite challenges over the past couple years, we're now seeing a new appetite to try brands, with 50% of consumers trying a new brand every 3 months. This is driving an increase in the competitiveness in the market as Chinese brands continue to win, specifically propelled by the Gen Z. Then we go to the Middle East, where we're seeing tremendous growth in the region, driven by a lot of the wealth, both with locals and expats, and this is creating a new definition of luxury. 90% of consumers in the Middle East believe that brands are affordable. This is much more than any other country that we researched in the report, and 1 out of every 4 have bought a brand with a luxury positioning. And finally, we turn to India, which will also see strong growth. This is aided by GDP per capita, and in India, we're seeing 60% of consumers increase their frequency of purchase in the last year. So what does this mean? This means that sub-market nuance matters. It means that hyper-localization will be key. And as we think about for brands and for retailers in the audience, you're going to need to continue to go beyond the traditional demographic way of thinking about in the specific country way of thinking about the world into actual attitudes and needs in a more nuanced way. Our second theme is called true value. Now, value has always been an important part of the beauty industry, and as Imran shared, even more now than ever before. We've seen mass and prestige gain a tremendous amount of ground in the last 5 years, up 5 percentage points, specifically in mass makeup and skin. This is being driven by challenger brands, being driven by better efficacy than ever before, and also being driven by the fact that mass and prestige brands is the entry choice for Gen Z and for men. But we know that consumers shop the price range, and I think this chart illustrates it. In our research, 50% of consumers shop price tiers, and this is a skincare example, which basically shows on one axis, consumers might be willing to save in the lip and cleanser categories, where on the other side, consumers are willing to splurge in serums and moisturizers. So what does this mean? I think for brands, it means that everyone needs a value strategy or a value for money strategy. And for retailers, I think it means perhaps diversified assortment and better understanding of where consumers are willing to trade up and where consumers are willing to trade down. Priya, back to you for the third theme.
The third theme is beyond the founder. Probably one of the biggest stories of the last decade is how celebrity, influencers, and industry darlings drove the beauty industry. From everyone like Hailey Bieber and Rhode and Emily Weiss and Glossier to Huda Beauty and Huda Kattan. Now, what we've seen is the flood of brands hitting the market, all with their own unique point of view. But many of these founders have struggled to take their businesses to a long-term point of view. Today's founder's charisma doesn't necessarily lead to long-term growth. What we found in our report is that when we asked global consumers what drives loyalty, only 5% said the founder. Quality, long-lasting results, and overall experience mattered much, much more. Founders can kickstart awareness, but it is no longer a defensible moat. In today's saturated market, hype does not mean lasting relevance. Our next theme is marketing's new balancing act. What we found here is that marketing, as you all know, is a very challenging thing. The growth levers for performance marketing no longer apply and no longer land in the way that they used to. So brands need to think about being more creative, bolder, more expression-led when they're talking to their customers. On one hand, in-store marketing is reigning supreme. 39% of global consumers say that physical stores is where they discover brands, discover products. On the flip, influencers are losing relevance. That's because customers are becoming more discerning, they are understanding that they have more education sometimes than influencers themselves, and they also are a little bit skeptical about why an influencer may be partnering with a brand. When you think about the right marketing mix, of course it's performance and of course it's brand. Some brands are doing this particularly well. One that we kind of called out in the report is Vacation, who has taken the SPF category and kind of leaned into this whole summer lifestyle culture. They've basically become the Margaritaville of beauty. Our next theme is channels at a crossroads. As we mentioned earlier, the channel landscape is changing. Customers are looking for convenience and speed, and they're also finding their favorite brands and products almost everywhere. Brand exclusives are really, really hard to get, unless you're Sephora, and that doesn't necessarily translate to not being able to find it on marketplaces or online stores as well. Social selling has also become increasingly important. TikTok is the new place that Gen Z and Gen Alpha is buying. So how do you kind of balance all of these different stores and all of these different experiences? Retailers need to work harder, not just on brand assortment and not just on marketing, but overall brand experience. Ulta, of course, in the recent example, has said they're bringing in-store events back to their stores. They're bringing much more tutorials, influencers, people to bring people back into the stores, especially in the middle market. So that's one thing that we've seen is that retailers need to work harder to get these people back into stores to fight against the convenience and speed that online marketplaces really offer.
So maybe in conclusion, we also wanted to share a bit of a recap of the executive priorities that surface in this year's survey. We surveyed over 100 executives and we had dozens of interviews, and these are the things that surface, many of which Priya and I have touched on in the report. The first is around value and the importance of value. We also see the importance of AI, especially as marketing costs have skyrocketed as a way to think about content creation and product development in a different way. The role of innovation and the importance of it in driving volume growth. And lastly, the importance of the 45+ consumer. There's also lots of things on executives' minds that are worrisome. Imran hit many of them in his opening. Consumer sentiment is plummeting. We have geopolitical instability, inflation, potential trade wars, and perhaps increased competition. So what does this all mean? Well, tomorrow we would invite you to join us for a more detailed deep dive into the report and a Q&A breakfast at 9 a.m. at the Garden House.
We look forward to seeing you guys there.
Thank you so much.